scripture for someone to say that you have to have a PhD in some modern science in astrophysics to say that is how you have to understand scripture. You know, God is not a God of confusion. He says, let the little children come. Faith of a child. All right, and he tells Moses, by the way, do this very plainly. When you relay it to your people, write down clearly what it says. And so with that, we can go back to Genesis 1, and when you look at the creation account, it would not be very clear at all if each one of these days was millions of years. No one in their right mind can read the text and come up with that.
Yeah.
It's not there. And in fact, one of the things that is really absurd, and I will use that language, is this gap theory.
Yes.
This idea that there's millions of years between verse 1 and 2. I've seen some people say there's millions of years between verse 2 and 3. They want to put millions of years in there. But let's read really these first verses in Genesis. All right, Genesis 1 says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now understand that the Jewish perspective, coming from the Jewish Publication Society's Torah commentary, the year 1917, and that's an important commentary because that is the Orthodox rabbinical commentary for Genesis, explains really these first 3 verses beautifully. Now, in our modern language, you know, we put chapters and verses in there. Well, that's a Greek thing. You know, the original Hebrew did not have chapters and verses. And what is explained by these Jewish rabbis is that verse 2, which is, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters, was parenthetical to verse 1. So what we mean by that is verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now, when we look around us today, we see land, we see trees, we see stars and moon and things like that. So the earth and the heavens that we witness today is not the same as when it first was initially created, and God made it clear then. So he was being very detailed and said, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now let me explain to you what that earth was. It was without form and void. Nothing was on it. And darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. So that tells us, wow, when he first did it, it didn't look like what it looks like today.
Yeah.
And then verse 3 is the conclusion to the opening thought in verse 1. So verse 3 says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. So the idea of the gap theory is crazy. It doesn't work in any way, because verse 1 is the beginning thought, and there's a parenthetical verse 2, and then verse 3 wraps up the beginning thought in verse 1. And so we can readily dispatch the gap theory.